I worked a night watch for a remote mountain research facility, the kind that monitors snowfall, wind load, and avalanche risk during winter storms. The job was mostly solitude and routine, which suited me fine. On February 3rd, a blizzard moved in faster than predicted, cutting off the access road by early evening. Protocols said to leave the exterior floodlights on overnight in case any delayed personnel or emergency crews tried to reach the site. Once the storm set in, the building stood alone in a white void. By midnight, the snow was falling sideways, thick and relentless. Wind howled against the outer walls, hard enough that the structure groaned in short, unibend bursts. Visibility dropped to almost nothing beyond the reach of the floodlights, which carved out a pale artificial circle in the storm. Beyond that glow was absolute darkness. I sat in the control room, sipping coffee, listening to radio updates, crackle and fade as the weather worsened. The first thing I noticed was how quiet the animals got. Usually, even in storms, you hear something. Wind through trees. The distant snap of branches under snow load. That night, the storm noise flattened everything else into silence. The sensation made my skin prickle. I stood and walked to the observation window, letting my eyes adjust to the floodlights blasting against the falling snow. Something stood at the edge of the light. At first, I thought it was a trick of drifting snow piling unevenly, the way shapes form and dissolve when visibility is poor. But the shape did not dissolve. It shifted, tall, narrow, just far enough away to stay mostly swallowed by the white. It moved a step forward, then stopped, as if testing the boundary of the light. I adjusted the exterior camera feed, zooming in carefully. The image shook under wind interference, but the silhouette sharpened just enough to make my stomach tighten. The thing was upright, skeletal in outline, shoulders raised too high, neck stretching upward like it did not remember when to stop growing. Its arms hung long and wrong, elbows angled too sharply inward. The snow fell heavy around it, but none seemed to land on its shoulders. The shape looked dry inside a landscape choking with moisture. I zoomed further, and the image stuttered briefly before stabilizing again. When it did, the figure had moved closer without crossing the distance in between. I backed away from the glass without realizing it. Every instinct told me the lights had done something, that they had announced the building's presence into a landscape that would have otherwise remained hidden. The figure lifted its head slightly, as if meeting my eyes through the storm. Then, it smiled. The mouth opened too wide, exposing teeth spaced irregularly and caked with old discoloration. The cameras did not show breath fog, yet the sound reached me anyway. A faint clicking, dry and rhythmic, like bone brushing. Bone carried through the wind and into the building. I reached for the radio and called the nearest ranger station. Static answered. Snow interference swallowed my voice. When I tried the emergency channel, the reply came fragmented and delayed. They told me to shelter and maintain position until conditions improved. None of them asked why I was whispering. Outside, the figure stepped fully into the floodlight. Now I could see how thin it was. Not starving thin. Hollow thin, like something that had consumed everything around it and still carried nothing inside. Patches of pale skin stretched tight across its frame. Its chest moved, but not in a rhythm that matched breathing. Each expansion looked tested, as though copied from memory. The lights hummed overhead. The figure tilted its head toward them. Fascinated, it raised one elongated hand and extended its fingers into the falling snow, watching flakes vanish against its skin. Then it looked back at the building. Hunger rolled off it so strongly I felt it despite the glass. I shut off one floodlight. The reaction was instant. The figure's head snapped upward. Its posture tightened. It stepped forward with speed that made my stomach lurch, movement suddenly decisive instead of curious. Snow kicked outward beneath its feet, though no footprints remained afterward. I turned the light back on immediately. The figure relaxed. It stood still again, staring at the building the way an animal watches a locked pantry. The mouth parted slightly. A breathless sound escaped, thick with intention rather than air. Something struck the outer wall softly, not on impact. Not an attack. A test. Fingers dragged gently along metal siding. Slow, confident, learning. Another slide followed near the doorframe. Then quiet. The exterior cameras flickered violently. When the image stabilized, the figure filled the frame. It leaned forward until its face was inches from the lens, one sunken eye fixed directly on the camera. The other drifted, unfocused, as though not fully attached to the skull. The radio clicked on without me touching it. A voice came through asking where the food was kept. The cadence was wrong. The consonants lingered too long. The word food sounded dragged, waited. I did not answer. I stayed still. The voice did not repeat itself. It simply waited. Minutes later, the figure stepped backward into the storm, smooth, unhurried. The snow erased it, inch by inch, until nothing remained beyond the floodlights. I did not turn the lights off. I left them burning until dawn. When relief finally arrived, they found long drag marks circling the perimeter just beyond where the light faded. No footsteps, no stumbles, just deep, looping grooves cut through untouched snow, as if something had paced patiently for hours. Closer to the building, beneath one floodlight, the snow had melted into a wide, damp oval. Not from heat, from weight, from something standing there far longer than anything living should have. The lights themselves were intact, no damage. Still humming steadily. The wiring beneath the panel had been stripped bare in places, not cut, not snapped. Chewed. I quit that job before winter ended. Now, whenever I see floodlights glowing in a snowstorm, cutting a perfect white circle out of darkness, I wonder how many times they have done the same thing. Not guiding people home, but telling something tall and starving that it has been noticed. The woods have a way of swallowing secrets, of taking things and sometimes giving them back changed. That's what happened to my friend Alex. We were on our annual camping trip, deep in the sprawling forests of the Pacific Northwest. It was late afternoon, the sun casting long, golden fingers through the ancient pines. Alex, always the restless one, decided to go for a short hike, just to a scenic overlook a mile or so up the trail. "I'll be back before the sun sets," he promised, his familiar grin flashing. I stayed behind, tending to the fire. Not a single worry in my mind. But the sun did set, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and orange. The air grew cold, and the familiar, friendly sounds of the forest were replaced by an unnerving silence. An hour passed, then panic started to claw at my throat. I called his name until my voice was raw, the sound swallowed by the immense darkness. Just as I was about to call for help, a figure stumbled out of the trees. It was Alex. He was drenched, his clothes clinging to him, shivering uncontrollably. His eyes were wide and vacant, staring right through me. "Alex, where have you been?" I was so worried. I rushed to him, throwing a blanket around his trembling shoulders. He didn't respond. He just stood there, dripping water onto the dry earth, his teeth chattering a frantic rhythm. "Are you okay? Did you fall in the lake?" I asked, trying to guide him toward the warmth of the fire. He shook his head, a slow, robotic motion. He was completely silent, a stranger in a familiar body. I helped him change into dry clothes, his movements stiff and uncoordinated, like a puppet on strings. He sat by the fire, but the warmth didn't seem to reach him. The silence was the worst part. It was heavy, suffocating. The Alex I knew was never quiet. He was the life of every trip, always cracking jokes, always talking. This was someone else. The next morning, I woke with a start, the early light filtering through the tent. Primera dua es alone. The spot where Alex had been sleeping was empty. A cold dread washed over me. I checked his hiking boots. Te Werigone. I scrambled out of the tent and looked at the trail leading away from our camp. In the soft dirt, I saw his boot prints, but something was terribly wrong. They led away from camp, towards the lake, just as you'd expect. I decided to follow them, calling his name again, my voice filled with a desperate hope. When I reached the shore of the still, glass-like lake, my blood ran cold. The tracks were there, clear as day, but they led from the water's edge, not to it. It was as if he had emerged fully formed from the depths and walked onto the land. There were no incoming tracks, no signs of a struggle, nothing, just a single set of footprints, walking away from the lake, soaking wet, and leading back to our camp. My mind couldn't process it. How could he have gotten into the lake without leaving a single trace? It was impossible. I ran back to the campsite, my heart hammering against my ribs, hoping he'd somehow returned. But the camp was just as I'd left it, silent and empty. I spent the rest of the day in a state of suspended terror, waiting, hoping. As dusk began to settle again, he returned. He walked into the clearing just as he had the night before, silent and emotionless. This time, he wasn't wet. "Alex," I said, my voice barely a whisper. He turned his head slowly, and for the first time, a smile touched his lips. But it was wrong. It was too wide, a stretched, unnatural caricature of his real smile. "Hey," he said, and the voice. It was his, but it wasn't. It had the right pitch, the right tone, but the rhythm was off. It was like listening to a recording with a slight delay. When I tried to make a joke to break the tension, he laughed, but it came a full half-second too late. A hollow, echoing sound that didn't reach his empty eyes. Throughout the evening, the wrongness grew. He would breathe in at odd moments, in the middle of a word, or hold his breath for an impossibly long time. His movements were just a little too deliberate, a little too jerky. He'd watch me, his head tilted at an angle that looked painful, his gaze unnervingly intense. It felt like I was being studied, analyzed by something wearing my friend's face. I tried to ask him what happened, where it went. He'd just smile that awful, stretched smile and say, "Just went for a walk." His answers were simple, evasive, and always followed by that slight, horrifying delay. The person sitting across the fire from me looked like Alex, sounded almost like Alex, but every instinct in my body was screaming that it wasn't him. It was a performance, a terrifyingly good imitation, but an imitation nonetheless. That night, sleep was impossible. I lay in my tent, clutching a camping axe, listening to the thing outside. It didn't sleep. I could hear it moving around the campsite, the soft crunch of its footsteps, a low, guttural humming that vibrated through the ground. It wasn't the sound of a human. It was something deeper, more ancient. At one point, I heard a scratching sound at the side of my tent, a slow, deliberate scrape of a fingernail against the thin fabric. I held my breath, my body rigid with fear. The scratching stopped, and then I heard it, right next to my ear. A whisper that was a perfect mimicry of my own voice. "Are you awake?" I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just lay there until the first hint of dawn, praying for sunlight. When the sun finally rose, I cautiously unzipped my tent. The campsite was empty. Alex saw the thing that looked like him was gone. Relief washed over me, so potent, it made me dizzy. One had to get out of there. I packed my gear in a frenzy, not caring about being neat, just needing to escape. As I started down the trail back toward civilization, I saw them. The footprints. His footprints. They led from the campsite, straight down the middle of the path. I followed them, my fear warring with a morbid curiosity. The tracks were clear and deep in the dirt for about 100 yards. And then, they just stopped. Not trailed off, not faded away. One moment there was a full boot print in the dirt, and the next, nothing. Just undisturbed pine needles and soil. It was as if he had been walking, and then simply ceased to exist, plucked from the earth in the middle of a step. I never saw Alex again. The official report lists him as a missing person, another hiker lost to the vast wilderness. But I know the truth. The woods didn't take him. Something else did. Something that came out of the lake. Something that could wear a person's skin like a suit and mimic their voice. I think about it all the time. About that thing practicing being human, learning his mannerisms, his laugh. I think about its footprints stopping in the middle of the trail. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone, I hear a faint scratching at my window and a whisper in a voice that is almost my own, asking if I'm awake. Thank you for listening. Remember to subscribe for more chilling stories from the dark corners of the world. The sound of an auger biting into thick ice is usually a comforting one for me. It's the sound of a good day ahead, of patience, and the promise of a fresh catch. But last winter, up on Lake of the Woods, that sound became the opening note to a symphony of absolute terror. My name is Alex, and I've been ice fishing since I could walk. I thought I knew everything about the cold, the silence, and the solitude. I was wrong. I'd set up my shack in a remote cove, miles from the nearest access point. It was perfect. The first day was blizzeye, pulled in walleye after walleye. The sun was bright, and the world felt simple. I had enough supplies to last a week, and I was looking forward to the quiet. That first night, as the temperature plummeted, I heard it. A single set of footsteps, heavy and slow, crunching on the snow outside my shack. I peeked through the small window, but saw nothing but the vast, empty expanse of the frozen lake shimmering under the moonlight. I figured it was just the ice shifting, or my mind playing tricks on me. The next day, fishing was terrible. The fish finder showed plenty of activity below, but nothing was biting. It was as if they were scared, hiding. A strange feeling of being watched crept over me, a constant prickle on the back of my neck. I tried to shake it off, blaming the isolation. But when night fell, the footsteps returned. This time, it didn't sound like one person. It sounded like two, maybe three, circling my shack. The crunching was heavier, more deliberate. I held my breath, my ear pressed against the thin wall. They walked around and around, a slow, predatory patrol. Again, I looked outside. Nothing. Just my own tracks leading to the shack and the endless, undisturbed snow. My heart pounded against my ribs. How could there be footsteps with no tracks? By the third day, Primera Y saw an edge. I hadn't slept. Every creak of the ice, every gust of wind sounded like a whisper. The feeling of being watched was no longer a prickle. It was a heavy weight. I decided I'd pack up and leave the next morning. I just had to make it through one more night. That evening, as the last light of the sun bled from the sky, the air grew unnaturally still. The kind of silence that's so deep, it hurts your ears. Then, it started. It wasn't just a few sets of footsteps anymore. It sounded like a crowd, dozens of them, all circling, faster and faster. The crunching of snow was a constant, maddening rhythm. It was impossible. There was no one out there. I was miles from anyone. Then came a new sound, a low scraping against the side of the shack. Long, deliberate scratches, like claws dragging down the metal siding. My blood ran cold. I grabbed the heavy iron poker from my small wood stove, my knuckles white. The scraping moved, tracing the perimeter of my tiny shelter. It went on for what felt like an eternity. Then, a loud, violent bang on the door rattled the entire shack, and I yelled out, a pathetic, terrified scream. The footsteps stopped. The scraping stopped. Silence? A silence more terrifying than the noise it replaced. I was frozen in place, staring at the door, expecting it to burst open. Nothing happened. Minutes turned into an hour. The silence remained. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know what was out there. Gathering every ounce of courage I had, I flung the door open. Poker raised, ready to face whatever it was. And I saw it. In the distance, at the edge of the tree line, a figure stood silhouetted against the moon. It was impossibly tall and gaunt, its limbs long and spindly, like the branches of a dead tree. It was skeletal, yet it moved, its head slowly turning towards me. Even from that distance, I felt its ancient, malevolent gaze lock onto mine. It wasn't human. It was something starved, something wrong. A Wendigo. I didn't need a second look. I slammed the door, barricaded it with my gear, and didn't move from that spot until the sun came up. The footsteps didn't return. The scraping was gone. As soon as the first rays of light hit the ice, I was out of there. I didn't even pack my gear. I ran until my lungs burned and I reached my truck. I didn't look back. I've tried to rationalize it since. The wind, the ice, the isolation, playing tricks on my mind. But I can't explain the scratches on the shack, and I will never, ever forget the sight of that skeletal figure watching me from the trees. A personification of hunger and the unforgiving cold. Some places are best left alone, and some silences are filled with things we aren't meant to understand. The ice keeps its secrets, and I'm lucky I didn't become one of them. Thanks for listening, and remember to be careful out there in the wild. You never know what's listening back. The drive from Durango was supposed to be simple. Just a straight shot down the lonely highway, cutting through the vast, dark expanse of the reservation. My friend, who'd lived here his whole life, had warned me. "Don't stop," he'd said, his voice unusually serious. "Especially not on the backroads at night. No matter what you see or hear." I'd laughed it off, but now, with miles of empty roads stretching ahead and behind me, his words echoed with a chilling weight. It was just after 2 a.m. when I first saw them. Headlights. They appeared in my rearview mirror out of nowhere, a sudden bloom of light in the pitch. At first, it was a relief. Company on this desolate stretch of asphalt, but the relief quickly curdled into unease. They were following too closely, their high beams searing into my eyes, reflecting off every mirror in my car. I tapped my brakes, a gentle hint for them to back off. They didn't. I sped up a little, putting some distance between us. The car behind me matched my speed instantly, the gap closing as if we were tethered by an invisible string. My heart started to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This wasn't normal. There were no side roads, no turnoffs. Where had they even come from? I squinted, trying to make out the make or model of the car, but the glare of their headlights was blinding, creating a halo of light that obscured everything else. All I could see were those two piercing orbs of white light, relentlessly burning into the back of my head. It felt like I was being hunted. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was a local who knew these roads better than I did, just impatient to get home. But the feeling in my gut screamed otherwise. It was a primal, cold dread that whispered of things ancient and wrong. My friend's warning about not stopping replayed in my mind, over and over. No matter what you see. Frustration and fear warred within me. I decided to try and get a look at the driver. Maybe seeing a person, a face, would make this less terrifying. I slowed down just enough, angling my side mirror. For a split second, the glare shifted. I could see the silhouette of their car. It looked like an older model sedan, beat up and dark. And then I saw the driver's seat. It was empty. My blood ran cold. I blinked, thinking my tired eyes were playing tricks on me. I looked again, my gaze locked on the rearview mirror. The headlights were still there, blazing. The car was still there, hugging my bumper. But the driver's seat was undeniably, terrifyingly vacant. There was no one behind the wheel. My breath hitched in my throat. A car with no driver, its headlights on full blast, was chasing me down a deserted reservation road in the middle of the night. Panic set in, sharp and absolute. I slammed my foot on the accelerator. The engine roared, and my old truck lurched forward, tires screeching on the pavement. I pushed it faster and faster, the speedometer needle climbing past 80. 1090, the truck shuddered, protesting the speed. But I didn't care. I just needed to get away. I glanced in the mirror, praying the phantom car was gone. It wasn't. It was right there, matching my speed effortlessly. Its vacant driver's seat a mocking void in the blinding light. The road ahead started to curve, a series of sharp, dangerous turns. I was taking way too fast. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Wait. Each turn, my tires screamed. And with each turn, the car behind me mirrored my movements perfectly. A shadow that couldn't be shaken. It didn't drift. It didn't skip. It moved with an unnatural precision. A predator, toying with its prey. Then, something changed. The headlights behind me flickered. Once. Twice. And then they went out. For a moment, I felt a wave of relief so intense, it almost made me dizzy. It was over, but the darkness that followed was somehow worse. The empty road was now completely black again. Was it still there? hiding in the dark. The silence was deafening. I kept my speed, not daring to slow down. My eyes scanned the rearview mirror, searching the inky blackness for any sign of movement. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Just as I started to believe I had imagined the whole thing, a new sound reached me over the roar of my engine. A scratching sound. It was coming from the back of my truck. Scrape. Drag. Scrape. It was the sound of metal on asphalt. My mind relayed. Had something fallen off the car behind me and gotten stuck under my truck? The sound grew louder, more frantic. It was a rhythmic, deliberate scraping that seemed to be moving. It was moving up the side of my truck bed. My stomach dropped. It wasn't something under my truck. It was something on it. I risked a glance at my passenger side mirror. In the faint moonlight, I saw it. A long, dark shape, impossibly thin, was clambering over the side of my truck bed. It moved with a jerky, disjointed motion, like a marionette with its strings tangled. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't human. The limbs were too long, bent at angles that were just wrong. It pulled itself onto the bed of my truck with a final heavy thud that shook the entire vehicle. I heard it begin to crawl forward, the scrape of its claws on the metal liner sending shivers down my spine. It was heading for the cab. It was coming for me. I couldn't scream. The sound was trapped in my throat. A choked, silent sob. My friends' stories, the ones I dismissed as local folklore, flooded my mind. Stories of the Skinwalker, beings that could change their shape, mimic voices, and run faster than a car. Beings that haunted these very roads. The scratching was at the rear window now, just inches behind my head. A sharp tapping started, like a long fingernail against the glass. Tap, 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 tap. I squeezed my eyes. A house. Any sign of life. The road remained stubbornly empty. The tapping became more insistent, turning into a frantic pounding. Then came the sound that will haunt my dreams forever. A voice, right behind me, whispering through the glass. It was a distorted, raspy version of my own voice. "Let me in," it hissed. My sanity finally snapped. I screamed. A raw, terrified sound that filled the small cab. I yanked the steering wheel hard to the right, then left, swerving violently across the road. I had to get it off. The truck fish-tailed wildly. The thing on the back let out a shriek, an unholy mix of an animal's cry and a human scream of rage. I heard a heavy thump as it was thrown from the truck bed onto the road. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I straightened the wheel and drove as if my life depended on it, which I knew it did. The lights of a small town finally appeared on the horizon, a faint glimmer of hope in the suffocating darkness. I didn't slow down until I was screeching to a halt in the parking lot of a 24-hour gas station, its fluorescent lights feeling like the safest place on earth. I sat there for a long time, shaking, my engine still running. When the sun finally started to rise, I got out on trembling legs to inspect my truck. The entire back panel and the rear window were covered in long, deep scratches, and embedded in the metal near the window was a single, long strand of coarse black hair, and something that looked disturbingly like a piece of dried, leathery skin. I never drove that road again. Some nights, when the wind howls just right, I can still hear that scratching and that awful, whispering voice, a perfect imitation of my own. Thanks for tuning in to our story tonight. If you enjoyed this journey into the dark, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more chilling tailies. Stay safe out there, and always check your rearview mirror. You never know what might be following you home. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we're venturing deep into the frozen heart of winter, to a place where the wind howls like a hungry beast, and the snow buries everything in a blanket of white. This isn't just a ghost story, it's a tale of primal fear, of a hunger that never dies. Pull the blankets up tight, because we're heading out to Blizzard Line, Mile 73. To talk about the Wendigo that tapped on the plow truck, our story comes from a guy named Frank, a seasoned snowplow operator who worked the treacherous mountain passes of northern Minnesota. For Frank, A blizzard wasn't a reason to stay home. It was a call to arms. His rig, a monstrous diesel-chugging beast he called the Grizzly, was his office, his sanctuary, and his shield against the fury of nature. He'd seen it all. Whiteouts so thick you couldn't see the hood of the truck, drifts taller than a house, and ice so slick it could send a semi-trailer spinning like a top. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for the night of the White Death blizzard. It was late January, and the storm had been raging for 2 solid days. The state had shut down the highways, but Frank's job was to keep one critical artery, Route 73, open for emergency vehicles. This stretch of road was notorious. Locals called it the Blizzard Line. It snaked through miles of dense, old-growth forest, a place steeped in Ojibwe legend, a place, they whispered, that was best left alone when the winter moon was high and the pantry was empty. Frank was about 12 hours into his shift. The hypnotic rhythm of the engine, the scrape of the plow on asphalt, and the endless cascade of snow were his entire world. The temperature outside had plunged to 30 below, not counting the wind chill. Inside the heated cab, with a thermos of black coffee and a classic rock station crackling on the radio, he felt a sense of isolated calm. That is, until he reached the marker for mile 73. It happened in an instant. The radio cut out, replaced by a wall of static. Frank cursed, fiddling with the dial, but it was dead. Then, a flicker in his headlights. He squinted, trying to pierce the swirling vortex of snow. Up ahead, something was standing in the middle of the road. It was tall, impossibly so, and gaunt. Frank's first thought was a moose, or maybe a deer, trapped by the drifts. He slowed the Grizzly to a crawl, its powerful lights cutting a path through the storm. As he got closer, his blood ran cold. This was no animal he'd ever seen. It was skeletal, its limbs too long and thin, bent at angles that seemed unnatural. Its skin was the color of old bruises, stretched tight over a frame that looked like it hadn't known a meal in a century. Its head was crowned with a rack of what looked like jagged, broken deer antlers. And its face, Frank said, he will never forget the face. It was a sunken, hollow-cheeked nightmare, with eyes that glowed with a faint, predatory light, like embers in a dying fire. And it was just standing there, unmoving, as the blizzard raged around it. Frank slammed on the brakes, the Grizzly groaning as it came to a halt just 20 feet from the figure. Every instinct screamed at him to reverse, to turn and flee, but the road was too narrow, the snowbanks too high. He was trapped. The creature slowly turned its head, those burning eyes locking onto him. It didn't seem to feel the cold. It didn't seem to feel anything but a ravenous, ancient hunger. Then, it did something that defied all logic. It raised one of its long, stick-like arms and pointed a single, bony finger directly at Frank. And then, it started to walk towards the truck. It moved with a jerky, horrifying gait, like a marionette with its strings tangled, its joints cracking audibly, even over the howl of the wind. Panic seized Frank. He laid on the horn, a deafening blast that should have sent any living thing running for the hills. The creature didn't even flinch. It just kept coming, closer and closer, its emaciated form growing larger in his windshield. He could see its mouth now, a lipless slash filled with yellowed, pointed teeth. He threw the truck into reverse, the huge tires spinning for purchase on the ice. The Grizzly lurched backward a few feet, then slid, its rear end bumping hard against the snowbank. He was stuck, utterly, completely stuck. The thing was at the front of the truck now, its glowing eyes just inches from the massive plow blade. Frank watched in horror as it reached out a skeletal hand and patted the cold steel, as if greeting an old friend. And then came the tapping. Tap, 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 a light, rhythmic sound on the passenger side window. The creature had moved with impossible speed. It was right there, its grotesque face pressed against the glass, its breath fogging a small circle on the frozen pane. Its eyes, those terrible, burning eyes, stared into his, and in them, Frank saw an eternity of starvation. It was looking at him not as a person, but as a meal. Tap, 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 tap. Tapping grew more insistent. A long, dirty fingernail, more like a talon, was scraping against the glass. Frank screamed. It was a raw, primal sound of pure terror that was swallowed by the storm. He fumbled for the radio mic, shouting for help. For anyone, his voice cracking with fear, but only static answered. The creature tilted its head, a sickening grin spreading across its face. It opened its mouth, and a sound came out that wasn't human. It was a low, guttural rasp, a dry, whispering hiss that sounded like frozen leaves skittering across pavement. And in that sound, Frank could almost make out a word, repeated over and over. A word that echoed the gnawing emptiness in his own stomach, the hunger that had been growing since he'd passed mile 73. Hunger. 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 Frank felt a strange, terrifying shift inside himself. The thermos of coffee, the half-eaten sandwich on the seat beside Heimet, all seemed like a distant memory. A new, gnawing void was opening up in his belly. A cold, desperate craving he had never known. He had this wild urge to just open the door. He fought it, shaking his head, tears freezing on his cheeks. He cranked the engine, revving it until it roared, hoping the noise would scare the thing away. But the Wendigo just smiled, its awful, hungry smile, and tapped on the window again. Faster this time. Crack. A small fracture appeared in the corner of the heavy-duty glass. The creature's smile widened. It drew back its hand and slammed its bony fist against the window. The crack spiderwebbed across the pane. Frank knew he had seconds. In a last, desperate act, he remembered the flares in his emergency kit. With trembling hands, he ripped one out, popped the cap, and struck Italiano. A brilliant, hissing red light flooded the cab, painting the monster's face in a demonic glow. For the first time, the creature recoiled, shielding its eyes. It let out a shriek of rage and pain, a sound so high and thin it made Frank's teeth ache. It wasn't much, but it was an opening. With the creature momentarily blinded, Frank slammed the truck into drive, flooring the accelerator. The tires screamed, they smoked, they bit, and with a tremendous lurch, the grizzly broke free from the snowbank. He didn't steer around the creature. He aimed directly for it. The truck hit the Wendigo with the force of a freight train. There was a sickening crunch of bone and a flash of its skeletal form flying into the darkness. Frank didn't slow down. He didn't look back. He kept his foot pinned to the floor, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, the red flare still burning on the seat beside him. He drove for what felt like an eternity, the static on the radio finally giving way to the faint sound of music. As he crossed the county line, he pulled over, his body shaking uncontrollably. The driver's side of the plow was dented, and there was a long, dark scratch along the passenger door. But of the creature, there was no sign. Frank finished his shift, drove back to the depot, and quit on the spot. He never drove a snowplow again. He moved south, away from the big woods and the deep snows. But he says that sometimes, on the coldest winter nights, when the wind howls just right, he can still hear it. That tapping, and he can feel that cold, gnawing hunger in the pit of his stomach. A reminder of the thing that waits on the blizzard line. The Wendigo that is always, always hungry. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Remember to be careful on those lonely roads, because you never know what's waiting out there in the storm. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next descent into the dark. Stay safe out there. The job paid well, and I never minded heights. That's probably why I ended up as a wind turbine technician, scaling a 300-foot tower to get to the nacelle. That massive box at the top housing the generator was just another day at the office for me. The views were incredible, especially out here in the desolate, windswept plains of northern Arizona. But one particular inspection, one that started like any other, would change my perception of heights, solitude, and the rustling wind forever. It was late afternoon, the sun beginning its slow descent, painting the vast, empty landscape in hues of orange and deep purple. I was working solo, a common occurrence on routine checks. The company was trying to cut costs, so sending two of us out was becoming rare. I'd just finished my climb up the long, cold, internal ladder of the turbine tower. The air was still and stuffy inside, a stark contrast to the gale that I knew was howling outside. I pushed open the heavy hatch at the top, stepping out into the cramped space of the nacelle. The roar of the wind immediately filled my ears, a constant, powerful symphony. The massive blade sliced through the air, just feet from me. A rhythmic whoosh-whoosh, whoosh-whoosh, that you could feel in your chest. My job was simple: run diagnostics, check fluid levels, and inspect for any wear and tear. I got to work, my movements practiced and efficient. My mind focused on the checklist clipped to my harness. About an hour passed. The sun had dipped lower, casting long, eerie shadows that stretched 4 miles across the scrubland below. I was almost done. Just a few final checks on the gearbox. That's when I heard it. It was faint at first, almost lost in the howl of the wind and the groan of the machinery, a sound that didn't belong. A rhythmic thump, thump. I paused, holding my breath, straining my ears. The sound was coming from outside, from on top of the nacelle. My heart skipped a beat. That was impossible. The nacelle's roof is a curved, slippery fiberglass shell, slick with oil and exposed to winds that could peel a man right off. No one could be up there. It had to be a loose panel, or maybe a bird had gotten incredibly unlucky. I tried to dismiss it, my rational mind searching for a logical explanation. I went back to my work, but my focus was shattered. Thump. Thump. There it was again. Louder this time, more deliberate. It sounded like footsteps, heavy footsteps, pacing back and forth directly above my head. A cold dread, colder than the high-altitude wind, began to creep up my spine. I was 300 feet in the air, in a metal box, miles from the nearest soul. Who or what could be walking on the roof? My hand trembled as I reached for the radio on my harness. Base, this is Tower 7. Do you copy? Static. I tried again. Base, this is Technician Miller at Tower 7. I have a situation. Is anyone else on site? Over. More static. The signal was usually spotty out here, but tonight it felt malicious, like the world had deliberately cut me off. The pacing stopped. An unnerving silence fell over the nacelle, a silence made even more profound by the ceaseless roar of the wind and blade. I stood frozen, my ears ringing. Then, a new sound, a scraping, a long, drawn-out screech of something sharp being dragged across the fiberglass roof. It was slow, deliberate, and it was moving towards the only other way out of the nacelle, the emergency escape hatch on the roof, right above me. Panic set in, raw and primal. Every horror story my Navajo grandfather used to tell me, stories I'd dismissed as old folklore, came rushing back. Tales of the Yi, Naldalushi, the Skinwalker, beings that could take the form of animals, that mimicked human sounds, that stalked the lonely and the isolated. He'd warned me about being out in the open, especially at dusk. They are drawn to the wind, he'd said. They listen on it. A loud bang directly above my head made me jump so hard I nearly dropped my wrench. It sounded like something had been dropped, or had landed right on the hatch. My blood ran cold. I was trapped. The main hatch had come through was below me, but the only way down was that long, dark ladder. The thought of climbing down, my back exposed to whatever was waiting for me to emerge, was terrifying. Then I heard the voice. It was a faint whisper at first, carried on the wind, seeming to come from all directions at once. It sounded like a distorted recording, a grotesque mimicry of a human voice. It was calling my name. It rasped, the sound inhumanly long and stretched out. Jahuk, I scrambled backwards, pressing myself against the far wall of the nacelle, my eyes wide with terror, fixed on the roof hatch. The scraping started again, but this time it was on the hatch itself. Fingernails, or claws, scratching, trying to find a purchase, trying to pry it open. My mind was screaming. This can't be real. It's the wind. It's the altitude playing tricks on me. But then the hatch handle, a heavy steel lever, began to jiggle. Slowly at first, then more violently. Asterisk. Jiggle, jiggle, jiggle. Bang. Jiggle, jiggle. Bang. Something was trying to force its way in. It knew how the mechanism worked. I could hear guttural clicks and growls mixed with the scratching, sounds that were neither human nor animal. It was a monstrous fusion of both. My survival instinct finally kicked in, overriding the paralysis of fear. I couldn't stay here. I looked at the main hatch below me, leading to the ladder. It was my only chance. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, I bolted for it. As my hand touched the cold steel of the hatch, a final, deafening crack echoed from the roof. The emergency hatch had been ripped from its hinges. I didn't look back. I threw open the main hatch and scrambled onto the ladder, my heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted to break free. I started descending, my hands and feet moving in a blur, slipping on the rungs in my haste. From the nacelle above, I heard a terrible, wet thud as something heavy dropped inside. A scream, a sound that was a twisted mockery of human pain, echoed down the tower shaft after me. It was my voice, or a perfect, horrifying copy of it. "Hold me. It's got my leg," it shrieked. I knew it was a trick, a lure to get me to stop, to hesitate. I forced myself to keep going, plunging down into the darkness of the tower, the mimicked screams and guttural chattering chasing me all the way down. I didn't stop until my feet hit the solid ground at the base. I burst out of the door, not daring to look up, and sprinted towards my truck, the keys fumbling in my trembling hands. As I peeled out of there, kicking up a cloud of dust, I risked a glance in the rearview mirror. For a split second, silhouetted against the dying light at the very top of the turbine, I saw a figure. It was tall, impossibly thin, and hunched over, its long limbs dangling grotesquely, and it was watching me go. I never went back. I quit the next day, given no explanation. They can keep the high pay. Some places, man was not meant to be. Some things, you're not meant to see. And some sounds, once heard on the wind 300 feet in the air, you can never, ever unhear. Thanks for tuning in for another story. If you've ever had an experience you can't explain, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Stay safe out there, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more Tillies from the dark. I'll see you in the next one. The old trapper, Silas, always said, never cross a frozen lake at night, especially when the winter winds howl like a hungry beast. I should have listened. My name is Alex, and I'm a wildlife photographer. My goal was to capture the elusive Arctic wolf on film, a creature as ghostly and beautiful as the northern lights themselves. That's what led me deep into the Canadian wilderness, miles from any town, with only my gear and a rented snowmobile for company. For days, I've been tracking a pack, their prints leading me further and further into the vast, white emptiness. I was running low on supplies, but the tracks were fresh. I could feel it. I was close. The trail led directly to the edge of a massive, frozen lake. It stretched 4 miles, a flat, white expanse under a bruised purple sky. Going around it would cost me a full day, maybe more. By then, the wolves would be long gone. My GPS showed a direct route across was only about 5 miles. A quick 30-minute ride, tops. The ice was thick, at least 1.5 feet, solid as concrete. The decision seemed simple. I gunned the engine of the snowmobile, its roar shattering the profound silence. The machine glided onto the ice, and I felt a thrill of excitement. The sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of orange and pink. It was breathtakingly beautiful. I was about halfway across when the engine sputtered and died. Who's like that? I tried the ignition again and again. Nothing. The silence that rushed back in was heavier this time, more absolute. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Stranded. The word echoed in my mind. The temperature was dropping fast. My only option was to walk the remaining 2.5 miles. I grabbed my pack, my rifle, and started walking. The crunch of my boots the only sound in the universe. The sun dipped below the horizon, plunging the world into a deep, dark blue. The moon was a pale sliver, offering little light. I switched on my headlamp, its beam cutting a lonely path through the darkness. That's when I heard it for the first time. A sound, faint and rhythmic, that didn't belong. It was a soft, wet sound, a rhythmic breathing. I stopped dead in my tracks, my own breath catching in my throat. I scanned the darkness, my headlamp beam bouncing nervously across the endless ice. Nothing, just snow and shadows. I told myself it was the wind, my own heartbeat, my mind playing tricks on me in the oppressive silence. I started walking again, faster this time, but the sound grew louder. It was coming from beneath me. From under the ice, it was a deep guttural inhale, followed by a long, rattling exhale. It sounded impossibly large, ancient. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knelt down, pressing my ear against the frozen surface. The cold bit at my cheek, but I didn't care. The sound was clearer now, undeniable. It was the sound of lungs, massive lungs, drawing in and pushing out air right beneath my feet. And with each breath, I felt a faint, deep vibration through the soles of my boots. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through me. This wasn't possible. Nothing could live under 1.5 feet of solid ice in a frozen lake. Nothing. I scrambled to my feet and started to run. I didn't care about the wolves anymore. I just wanted off this cursed ice. The breathing followed me, keeping pace. A deep, resonant pulse from the black water below. I imagined something swimming beneath me, its gaze fixed on my shadow. Then I saw something else. Up ahead, in the beam of my headlamp, was a dark shape frozen into the ice. As I got closer, my blood ran cold. It was a deer. Its body was contorted, its eyes wide with a terror that even death hadn't erased. But that wasn't the most horrifying part. Its ribcage was torn open, but not by a wolf or a bear. It was splintered outwards, as if something from inside had burst free. I backed away slowly, my rifle feeling like a child's toy in my hands. The breathing under the ice was louder now, more excited, more hungry. It was directly beneath the deer. Then I heard a new sound, a crack. It started as a thin, spidery line near the deer's carcass and began racing across the ice, straight towards me. More cracks followed, branching out like a web. The deep, rhythmic breathing was now punctuated by the sharp, splintering sounds of the ice giving way. I ran with a desperation I've never known, my lungs burning, my legs screaming. The cracking sounds were all around me, a symphony of destruction. I didn't dare look back. I could feel the ice groaning and shifting under my feet. The breathing was a roar now, a sound of pure, primal hunger that vibrated through my entire skeleton. It felt like I was running on the chest of a waking giant. Ahead, I could finally see the dark line of the shore, the silhouettes of pine trees, a promise of solid ground. It was only 100 yards away. 50. 20. The breathing sound was right behind me, deafeningly loud. I could almost feel hot, foul air on the back of my neck. I threw myself forward, scrambling off the ice and onto the snowy bank, just as a huge section of the lake behind me gave way. With a sound like 1,000 windows shattering, the ice collapsed into the black water. I turned, my back pressed against a tree, and raised my headlamp. For a single, horrifying second, the beam illuminated what had been chasing me, rising from the dark. Churning water was ahead. It was gaunt, skeletal, with pale, tight skin stretched over a deer-like skull. Its eyes were sunken pits of blackness that burned with an ancient, malevolent intelligence. Its mouth, filled with needle-like teeth, was stretched into a grotesque grin. It was impossibly tall, its emaciated limbs unfolding from the water like a spider's legs. It was a creature born of starvation and cannibalism, the spirit of the lonely winter. A Wendigo. It let out a scream, not of an animal, but a twisted, human-like shriek that mimicked the sound of the wind, a sound of eternal, gnawing hunger. It took one long, bony step onto the remaining ice, its claws digging in, and then it was gone, melting back into the shadows of the forest on the other side of the lake, as if it had never been there at all. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even stop moving until I stumbled back into civilization 2 days later. Frostbitten and half-mad. They said I was lucky to be alive, a survivor of the brutal wilderness, but I know what I survived. I survived the thing that breathes under the ice, I never went back for my camera or the snowmobile. Some pictures aren't worth taking. And some legends, some legends are hungry. So if you ever find yourself in the far north, and you hear the wind howling like a hungry beast, remember my story. Stay off the frozen lakes at night, because you never know what might be waiting and breathing just beneath your feet. The drive from Vegas to California is usually a test of patience. A straight shot through a shimmering, heat-baked desert. But what happened to me on that highway? It wasn't just a test of patience. It was a test of my sanity. It all started with the heat. A suffocating 110-degree blanket that made the air itself feel thick and heavy. My car's AC was fighting a losing battle, and the sun was a merciless eye in the sky. I'd left Vegas late, hoping to beat the worst of the traffic. But now, with miles of empty asphalt stretching ahead, I was starting to regret it. The desert at night is a different beast, and I was about to learn just how different. The first sign something was wrong was the coyote. It darted out onto the road, and I slammed on my brakes, my tires screeching in protest. It was huge, way bigger than any coyote I'd ever seen, with ragged, mangy fur. But the weirdest part was its eyes. In the brief glare of my headlights, they didn't just reflect the light. They seemed to glow with their own unsettling intelligence. It stared right at me, not with the fear of an animal, but with a cold, calculating look. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone, swallowed by the darkness. I shook my head, blaming the heat and the long drive. Just a weird desert animal, premeditated myself, but a knot of unease had already started to form in my stomach. About an hour later, the car started sputtering. The temperature gauge shot into the red, and steam began pouring from under the hood. I cursed, pulling over to the shoulder. I was in the middle of nowhere. No lights, no other cars. Just the endless desert and the vast, stardusted sky. My phone had no service. Of course, I popped the hood, and a cloud of hot steam hit me in the face. The radiator was toast. I was stranded, standing by the side of the road. I felt a sudden, primal fear. The silence was absolute, broken only by the ticking of the cooling engine. It was a silence that felt heavy, watchful. That's when I heard it. A sound that didn't belong. It was a faint cry, like a baby. My blood ran cold. A baby. Out here, it couldn't be. I scanned the darkness, my heart pounding in my chest. The crying came again, closer this time, from somewhere out in the scrub brush. Every instinct screamed at me to stay in the car, to lock the doors and wait for daylight. But the sound was so pitiful, so desperate. What if someone had crashed? What if a family needed help? Against my better judgment, I grabbed the heavy-duty flashlight from my glove compartment and stepped out into the oppressive night. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding small and weak. "Is anyone there?" The crying stopped. The sudden silence was even more terrifying. I swept my flashlight beam across the landscape. Rocks, cacti, and shadows that danced like ghostly figures. Nothing. "Hello," I called again, a little louder. Then I heard a rustling in the bushes to my right. My light snapped towards the sound. Two eyes, low to the ground, reflected the beam. It was the coyote from before, or at least, I thought it was. It was just standing there, watching me. Its head was tilted in a way that seemed unnaturally curious. The baby cries started again, but this time, they were coming from the direction of the coyote. No, that wasn't possible. My mind was playing tricks on me. I backed away slowly, never taking my eyes off the creature. The coyote took a step forward, and then another. It wasn't moving like a normal animal. Its gait was wrong, jerky and uneven, as if it was still learning how to use its legs. And the sound was coming from its throat, a perfect imitation of a crying infant. A chilling, flawless mimicry. This was no coyote. My heart felt like it was going to explode. The stories my grandfather used to tell me, tales I'd dismissed as campfire folklore, came rushing back. Stories of skinwalkers, shapeshifters who could take the form of animals and mimic human voices to lure their victims. I scrambled back into my car, fumbling with the lock. The thing outside let out a sound that was no longer a baby's cry. It was a low, guttural laugh that seemed to mock my terror. It scraped its claws along the side of my car, a sound like nails on a chalkboard that went straight to my bones. I huddled in the driver's seat, flashlight beam fixed on the window, shaking uncontrollably. Then I saw its face pressed against the glass. It wasn't a coyote's face anymore. It was something in between. A horrific, distorted blend of human and animal features. The eyes were human dark, intelligent, and filled with a terrifying, ancient malice. The snout was elongated. The teeth were long and sharp like a wolf's, and its skin was stretched tight over its skull. It started whispering my name. It was a dry, rasping sound, like dead leaves skittering across pavement, but it was my name, Daniel. It hissed, its breath fogging the window. "Let me in, Daniel. It's so cold out here." But it wasn't cold. It was a furnace outside. How did it know my name? Panic seized me. I started honking the horn, a frantic, desperate rhythm, hoping to scare it away or attract help. The thing recoiled from the noise, snarling, its face contorting in rage. It backed away from the car and began to change. Its form twisted and elongated, bones cracking and reshaping in the pale moonlight. It was growing taller, shedding its canine features, becoming horrifyingly, impossibly human-like. But it was all wrong. Its limbs were too long, its joints bent at unnatural angles. It stood there, a tall, gaunt silhouette against the stars, a grotesque parody of a man. It raised a long, spindly arm and pointed a finger at me. And then it spoke, not in a whisper, but in a clear, calm voice that sounded eerily familiar. It was my father's voice. "Daniel, son, open the door. I had an accident. I need your help." My father was safe at home in California, hundreds of miles away. My mind screamed, it's a trick, but hearing his voice, so perfectly replicated, sent a fresh wave of horror through me. I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing my hands over my ears, trying to block out the sound. It's not real. It's not real. I chanted to myself like a mantra. The torment went on for what felt like an eternity. It cycled through voices: my mother, my sister, my best friend, each one begging, pleading, trying to find a weakness in my resolve. It would scratch at the doors, tap on the roof, and whisper my deepest fears into the night. It knew things it shouldn't know. The desert itself seemed to be holding its breath, a silent witness to my nightmare. Just as I thought I was going to lose my mind completely, I saw it, a pair of headlights in my rearview mirror, growing larger. A truck was coming. Hope, pure and brilliant, surged through me. The Skinwalker saw it too. It let out a final, frustrated shriek. It was a mix of a dozen different animal cries, a sound that made the car vibrate. Then, it turned and melted back into the desert shadows, disappearing as if it were never there. The semi-truck roared past, its driver probably oblivious to the life and death struggle that had just played out on the side of the road. But its passing broke the spell. Other cars started to appear, the first signs of the morning commute. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, a highway patrol officer pulled up behind me. I could barely speak, babbling about a monster, about the voices. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and concern, probably thinking I had heat stroke. He called a tow truck for me. As I waited, I looked out at the desert, now bathed in the gentle morning light. It looked so peaceful, so ordinary, but I knew what was out there. I knew what walked the lonely highways when the sun went down. I never told anyone the full story. Who would believe me? But I know what I saw, and I know I'll never drive that stretch of road at night again, because some things are better left undisturbed in the vast, silent desert. And some stories are true, whether you want to believe them or not. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the story, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more chilling tales. Stay safe out there. The Northwoods have secrets, ancient and hungry. We think we know the forests, the whisper of wind through pines, the familiar snap of a twig underfoot. But some things are meant to be forgotten, buried under layers of snow and time. My grandfather, a man whose face was a roadmap of harsh winters and quiet wisdom, used to tell me stories. Not fairy tales, but warnings. He'd say the deepest, darkest parts of the woods don't belong to us, and sometimes take all out. This is the story of the one time, I answered. It was late autumn, that brittle, in-between season when the world is painted in shades of brown and gray. I was tracking a massive buck I'd been watching for weeks. The air was cold enough to see your breath, sharp and clean. I'd pushed deeper into the state forest than I ever had before, chasing the promise of a trophy that would make me a local legend. The sun was starting to dip low, casting long, skeletal shadows through the trees. That's when I heard it. A sound that didn't belong. It was faint at first. A high, melodic cry that seemed to drift on the wind. It was beautiful. Almost like a woman singing a lullaby. It was utterly out of place. My hunter's instincts screamed at me to turn back, that something was wrong. But curiosity, that foolish, fatal human trait, got the better of me. The sound was hypnotic, pulling me forward. Every logical part of my brain was a blaring alarm, but my feet kept moving, as if attached to strings. I told myself it was just the wind, or a strange bird, anything to quiet the growing dread in my gut. The song grew stronger, clearer, echoing in a way that seemed to defy the dense woods. It felt like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere all at once. It was a siren's call, and I was sailing right towards the rocks. I broke into a clearing I didn't recognize. The trees here were older, gnarled and twisted, their branches like grasping claws against the bruised purple sky. And in the center of the clearing, bathed in the last rays of twilight, stood a deer. But it wasn't the buck I'd been tracking. This one was wrong. It was unnaturally still, its head cocked at an angle that looked painful. Its fur was patchy, revealing pale, almost translucent skin underneath. But the worst part was its eyes. They weren't the soft, brown eyes of a deer. They were intelligent, and they were glowing with a faint, malevolent light as they stared directly at me. My blood ran cold. The beautiful singing had stopped. The only sound was the frantic drumming of my own heart. I slowly raised my rifle, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. This wasn't an animal. This was a violation of nature. As I centered the creature in my scope, the impossible happened. It began to change. Its front legs buckled, then straightened in a way they weren't meant to, cracking and popping like dry kindling. Its body elongated, stretching upwards with a series of sickening snaps. Fur receded, bones shifted, and the deer stood up. It stood on two impossibly long, spindly legs. It must have been 8, maybe 9 feet tall. Its arms were thin, ending in long yellowed claws that scraped the frozen ground. Its face was a nightmare pulled from the darkest corners of human fear. The deer's head had elongated into something long and skull-like, crowned with a rack of jagged, broken antlers. Its mouth was a lipless gash filled with needle-themed teeth, and from that maw, a low, guttural growl rumbled, a sound of pure, bottomless hunger. The beautiful song had been a lie, a lure. This was the singer, the Wendigo. It took a step towards me, its movements jerky and unnatural, like a marionette with its strings cut. I was paralyzed, not by fear, but by a primal terror that bypassed my brain and seized every muscle in my body. The stories my grandfather told me flooded my mind. The insatiable hunger, the mimicry, the way it lured you in with the voices of loved ones, or beautiful melodies. I had walked right into its trap. Its glowing eyes, now a burning, hateful yellow, never left mine. It knew I was terrified. It was feeding on it. Something inside me finally broke free. The survival instinct, the most basic and powerful drive we have. I didn't aim. I just fired. The roar of the rifle shattered the unholy silence. The bullet hit the creature square in the chest, a place that would have dropped any deer, any bear. It barely flinched. It just tilted its head, that horrifying, skull-like face. contorting into something that looked grotesquely like a smile. It let out a shriek, a sound that wasn't a lullaby anymore. It was a scream of rage and hunger, a sound that clawed at my eardrums and threatened to tear my sanity apart. I didn't wait to see what it would do next. I turned and ran. I ran faster than I've ever run in my life, fueled by pure adrenaline. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I could hear it behind me, crashing through the undergrowth with unnatural speed. Branches whipped at my face. Roots tried to trip me, but I just kept going, my lungs burning, my legs screaming in protest. The creature's shrieks echoed through the forest, sometimes sounding far away, sometimes sounding like they were right behind my ear. It was toying with me, enjoying the chase. It wasn't just hunting me for food. It was hunting me for sport. I have no idea how long I ran. Minutes felt like hours. The forest became a blur of dark shapes and suffocating fear. I finally burst out of the tree line and onto the logging road where I'd parked my truck. My keys fumbled in my trembling hands. Every second an eternity. I could still hear its screams. Closer now. I threw myself into the cab, slammed the door, and cranked the engine. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the edge of the woods. For a split second, I saw it, standing just at the tree line. That tall, skeletal figure, its yellow eyes, burning holes in the night. Then it melted back into the shadows, as if it were never there. I drove all night. I didn't stop until the sun came up and I was hundreds of miles away. I never went back to that part of the woods. I sold my rifle. I stopped hunting. Some nights, when the wind howls just right, I can still hear it. That beautiful, terrible song. A reminder of the hunger that waits in the deep, dark places of the world. A reminder of the day I saw the deer stand up. Thanks for listening to my story. I hope it serves as a warning. The woods are beautiful, but they demand respect. Some secrets are best left undisturbed. If you enjoyed this tale and want to hear more, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Stay safe out there. The crisp mountain air was still thick with a pre-dawn chill, the kind that bites at your exposed skin and makes you question leaving a warm bed. My brother, Liam, and I were out for our favorite ritual, foraging for morel mushrooms at first light. We'd been doing this since we were kids, taught by our grandfather who knew these woods like the back of his hand. He'd always told us to respect the forest, to listen to its whispers, and to never, ever whistle after dark. Old superstitions, we thought. But that morning, we would learn that some warnings are etched in more than just folklore. The sky was a deep, bruised purple, just beginning to bleed into shades of orange and pink at the horizon. Our headlamps cut cones of light through the lingering mist, illuminating the damp, mossy ground. It was perfect morel weather. The thrill of the hunt was already buzzing in my veins. "See anything yet?" Liam whispered, his voice a puff of white in the cold air. I shook my head, my eyes scanning the base of a cluster of old oak trees. That's when I heard it. A faint rustle in the undergrowth, just beyond the reach of our lights. Probably just a deer, Brumetta told myself, but an unsettling feeling began to prickle at the back of my neck. We pushed deeper, the familiar path growing less distinct. The silence of the woods was different today. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, expectant. Liam stopped, suddenly, holding up a hand. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice tight. I strained my ears, hearing only the thumping of my own heart. "Hear what?" I replied, trying to keep my tone light. He didn't answer. He just stood frozen, his headlamp beam fixed on a spot in the darkness. I followed his gaze. There, partially hidden behind a thicket of ferns, was a shape. It was vaguely humanoid, but its proportions were all wrong. Too tall, too thin, its limbs bent at angles that made my stomach churn. "What is that?" I breathed, a cold dread washing over me. Liam slowly started to back away, pulling me with him. "Don't look at it," he hissed. "Just walk. Don't run." But my eyes were glued to the figure. As it stepped out from the shadows, the beam of my headlamp caught its face. It had no face. It was a smooth, pale expanse of skin, like a mannequin, except for two dark, hollow pits where eyes should have been, and then it moved, scuttling sideways with an unnatural speed that defied logic. It wasn't chasing us, it was flanking us, herding us. Panic finally broke through my paralysis. We turned and ran. We didn't care about the path anymore. We just crashed through the brush, branches whipping at our faces, thorns tearing at our clothes. Behind us, I could hear it keeping pace, the sound of its unnatural gait, a sickening crunch of leaves and snapping twigs. But there was another sound, too. A voice. It was faint at first, a mimicry of a bird call, then a coyote's howl, each one perfectly replicated but with an underlying, distorted quality that made the hairs on my arms stand up. It was getting closer. We burst into a small clearing, gasping for breath, our lungs on fire. We thought we'd lost it. The first rays of sunlight were finally piercing through the canopy, painting the clearing in golden stripes. A fragile sense of relief washed over me. I think we're okay," Liam panted, leaning against a tree. I nodded, trying to slow my frantic heartbeat. And then the voice came again, clear as a bell, right next to my ear. It was our grandfather's voice. "You boys should have listened," it said. I whipped my head around. No one was there. Liam's eyes were wide with terror. "What was that?" he whispered, his face pale. The voice spoke again, this time mimicking my mother. "Come home, boys. Supper's ready." It was a chorus of the familiar, a symphony of the loved, all twisted into something monstrous. The sounds were coming from all around us now, echoing through the trees. We were surrounded. We huddled together in the center of the clearing, back to back, our headlamps darting wildly into the woods, but we saw nothing. Only the trees, the mist, and the growing daylight. Then, the worst part happened. I felt a strange vibration in my own chest, a tickle in my throat. I tried to shout to Liam, to tell him to run, but the words wouldn't come. My mouth opened, but the voice that came out wasn't mine. It was a perfect imitation of Liam's. "It's okay, Jake. It's just me." Liam stared at me, his expression a mask of pure horror. "What did you say?" He stammered. I shook my head frantically, trying to tell him it wasn't me, but I had no control. My own throat betrayed me, the alien voice using my vocal cords as its instrument. "I'm right here." My mouth sighed in Liam's voice. A low, guttural laugh followed, a sound that seemed to crawl from the deepest pit of my stomach. It was inside me. This thing, this creature, it wasn't just mimicking us from the shadows. It had found a way in. I could feel it coiling in my chest, a cold, foreign presence puppeteering my own body. I looked at my hands, expecting them to look different, twisted, but they were just my hands, shaking uncontrollably. The terror wasn't just around me anymore. It was part of me. Liam backed away, his eyes locked on mine, filled with a terror I've never seen before and hoped to never see again. He wasn't looking at his brother anymore. He was looking at a monster wearing my skin. "Get out of him," he screamed, his voice cracking. The thing inside me laughed again, a dry, rattling sound that vibrated through my bones. We were having so much fun. My lips curled into a smile that felt alien on my face. "Don't you want to play a game?" My own body was a cage, and something ancient and evil held the key. We never found any mushrooms that day. We barely found our way out of the woods, stumbling onto a logging road as the sun climbed high in the sky. I don't remember much of the journey back. All I remember is the feeling of that presence, slowly receding as the daylight grew stronger, like a parasite releasing its host. By the time we got to the truck, my voice was my own again, raw and hoarse. We never spoke about what happened, not a single word. We sold our foraging gear and never went back to those woods. Sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone, I feel a phantom tickle in my throat. I'll clear it, and for a terrifying second, I yell I'll hear nature, a perfect mimicry of my own voice, whispering from the darkness, and I know it's still out there, waiting. waiting for someone else to ignore the warnings and wander into its woods at first light. Thank you so much for joining me for this story. If it sent a chill down your spine, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there, and remember, always listen to the whispers of the woods. The engine screamed, but my tires found no purchase on the black ice. 1 second I was driving, the next, my truck was spinning, a metal top on a frozen highway. It crashed backward into a ditch, the impact jolting every bone in my body. The snow was already coming down hard, a blizzard swallowing the outskirts of Chicago. My phone had no signal. I was stranded. I checked the glove box, found a half-empty water bottle and a crumpled protein bar. Great. The plan was simple. Stay in the truck, stay warm, and wait for a snowplow. Hours crept by. The world outside was a swirling vortex of white. The only sounds were the howling wind and the groaning of metal as the truck settled. Then, another sound cut through the storm. A faint, rhythmic crunching. At first, I thought it was just the wind playing tricks, or maybe an animal. But the sound grew closer, more deliberate. Crunch. 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 It was the sound of heavy footsteps in deep snow. I strained to see through the frosted windshield. A figure was emerging from the blizzard. It was tall, impossibly so, and skeletal thin, its limbs long and gangly. It moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, like a puppet with its strings tangled. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't a rescuer. This was something else. It was walking along the highway, its head turning from side to side, as if searching. Primera ducked down, my breath fogging the cold air in front of my face. Don't let it see me. Please, don't let it see me. The crunching stopped right beside my truck. Silence. A thick, heavy silence that was somehow louder than the storm. I squeezed my eyes shut, my knuckles white as I gripped the steering wheel. I could feel a presence, a malevolent energy pressing in on the cab. A shadow fell over the driver's side window. I didn't dare look. Just pried. A sharp, scratching sound raked against the metal of the door. It was like long fingernails dragging down a chalkboard. Then a tap. Tap. Then the glass. My blood ran cold. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The tapping became more frantic, insistent. It was trying to get my attention. It knew I was in here. Slowly, I forced myself to turn my head. What I saw will haunt my nightmares forever. Pressed against the glass was a face that was barely human. The skin was stretched tight over a skull, gray and translucent, like old parchment. The eyes were sunken into deep, dark sockets, but they glowed with a faint, hungry light. Its mouth was a lipless slit that stretched too wide, filled with jagged, yellowed teeth. And the smell, even through the sealed cab, a coppery, rotten scent seeped in. It was the smell of decay and ancient hunger. It opened its mouth, and a sound came out that wasn't a word, but something far older and more terrifying. It was a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the truck, a sound of pure, ravenous need. It raised a long, bony hand, its fingers ending in blackened, broken claws, and traced the line on the frosty window. It was looking right at me, its gaze pinning me in place. Fear gave way to pure, primal terror. I fumbled for the ignition, my hands shaking so badly I could barely fit the key. The engine sputtered, wind, and finally caught. The creature shrieked, a high-pitched, piercing sound that made my ears ring. It threw its weight against the truck, rocking it violently. I slammed the gear into drive, flooring the gas pedal. The tires spun uselessly, kicking up snow and ice. The creature slammed against the door again, harder this time, the metal groaning under the force. I kept my foot pressed to the floor, praying for a miracle. The tires finally bit into something solid. The truck lurched forward, skidding out of the ditch and back onto the icy asphalt. I didn't look back. Primera? Good. The creature's horrifying shriek followed me, echoing through the blizzard, a promise of a hunt, that had just begun. I swerved down the highway, fishtailing wildly, my eyes glued to the rearview mirror. For a few terrifying seconds, I could see it, a tall, spindly silhouette running after the truck, its long legs covering the ground at an impossible speed. It kept pace with me, its glowing eyes a beacon in the storm. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it veered off the road and vanished back into the swirling snow. I drove for what felt like an eternity, my body trembling. The image of that face burned into my mind. When I finally saw the flashing lights of a police car and a snowplow, I pulled over and collapsed over the steering wheel, sobbing. They said I was lucky, that the blizzard was one of the worst in years. They towed my truck and gave me a ride into the city. I tried to tell them what I saw. A tall man, I said. A strange man. They just nodded, blaming it on hypothermia and shock. But I know what I saw. I've read the old stories, the legends the Native American tribes tell of a spirit born of starvation and cannibalism, an eternal hunger that roams the coldest, most desolate places. I don't drive at night anymore, especially not when it snows. Sometimes, when the wind howls just right, I can almost hear it. That high-pitched shriek, that sound of insatiable hunger. I know it's still out there, in the cold and the dark, walking the lonely highways, forever searching. And I know it remembers me, the one that got away. The dust in Iraq has a taste. It's gritty, ancient, and it gets into everything. Your mouth, your gear, your soul. We were rolling down MSR Tampa, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through an endless sea of tan, on a route clearance patrol. Just another day in the sandbox, or so we thought. My name is Sergeant Miller, and I was the gunner on the lead Humvee. My world was a 360-degree swivel of sand, sun, and the constant, gut-churning search for anything out of place. That's when I saw it. About 200 meters off the road, half buried in the sand, was what looked like a burlap sack. The shape was wrong, lumpy, human-like. Next to it, a glint of metal wire caught the sun. Classic, I'd tell. Got a possible IED. 200 meters. 3 o'clock. I barked into the comms. The convoy ground to a halt. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the hum of our engines and the blood pounding in my ears. My TC Luderaten Jacobson had the binos. Confirm. Mila looks like a pressure plate next to a scarecrow or something. EOD is on the way. We waited. 10 minutes in that heat feels like an hour. The sun beat down, turning my turret into an oven. I kept my 50 cal trained on the object, my eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of a triggerman. Nothing. Just the heat haze making the desert dance. The IOD truck rumbled up, and 2 techs, bless their brave souls, started their slow, methodical walk toward the device. We called it the longest walk. Everything was by the book. We set up a perimeter, eyes peeled, sweat dripping down our backs. I stayed locked on the target, my thumb hovering over the butterfly triggers. The scarecrow, or whatever it was unnervingly still. It was dressed in rags, the kind you'd see on local farmers, but there was no farm for miles. As the UOD guys got closer, maybe 50 meters out, something happened that froze the blood in my veins. The scarecrow's head, a lumpy burlap sack, slowly turned. It wasn't the wind. The air was dead still. It turned with a deliberate, unnatural smoothness, and it faced me. I blinked, wiping sweat from my eyes. Must be the heat, the dehydration, the constant stress playing tricks on me. You guys seeing this? I whispered into the mic, feeling foolish. Seeing what? Miller. Jacobson's voice was sharp, annoyed. The scarecrow. It just moved. Silence on the comms. I could feel their eyes on me, probably thinking I was losing it. Stay focused, Sergeant, Jacobson ordered, his voice tight. But I tried. I really did, but I couldn't look away. The thing was staring right at me. I couldn't see eyes, but I could feel its gaze. A cold, heavy pressure in the center of my forehead. The OD techs reached the device. One of them knelt, his movements precise and calm, while the other stood watch. And then it waved. The scarecrow's arm, a stick wrapped in rags, lifted slowly. It wasn't a jerky, puppet-like motion. It was fluid, like a real arm. It lifted, and the tattered rags at the end of the stick flexed, like fingers in a slow, beckoning wave. It's waving at us. I screamed into the cums. This time, I wasn't the only one. Holy, I see it. That was PFC Evans from the truck behind me. What the hell is that thing? Panic flared through the radio net. Jacobson was shouting for a comm. It's a decoy. They're trying to distract us. Eyes on the perimeter. Watch for a secondary. His words made sense, but my eyes were glued to that waving arm. It felt personal. It felt like it was waving just for me, pulling me in. The EOD tech on the ground gave a thumbs up. It's a dud, he read. Well-made decoy, but no explosives. Just a bag of sand and some scrap. A collective sigh of relief went through the convoy, but mine was short. The moment the tech said dud, the scarecrow's arm dropped. Its head swiveled back to face the road, and the whole thing just slumped, becoming a lifeless pile of rags and sticks again. It was as if the show was over. The OD team bagged the decoy as evidence, and we prepared to move out. Everyone was chalking it up to a new insurgent tactic, a psychological game to rattle us. And it worked. The rest of the patrol was tense, with everyone jumping at shadows. I couldn't shake the feeling, the way it looked at me, the way it waved. It wasn't a tactic. It was something else, something ancient and malevolent that the desert had coughed up. We caught it. De waving. Man of Tampa. It became a legend in our unit, a ghost story told over lukewarm coffee and MREs. Other patrols reported seeing it, always in the distance, always just off the road. Sometimes it was just standing there. Other times it would be seen waving slowly before a real IED was found further down the road. It was like a harbinger. My tour ended and I came home, but I brought the dessert with me. Some nights I'd wake up in a cold sweat. The image of that thing burned into my mind. I'd be back in the turret, the Iraqi sun beating down, and I'd see it on the side of a highway in Ohio, or standing in a cornfield behind my house, a lumpy, burlap figure, its head slowly turning to face me. And then, the wave, a slow, deliberate invitation. I know, it sounds crazy. PTSD, right? But that's what the VA doctors say. Hypervigilance hallucinations brought on by trauma. They gave me pills and told me to talk about it, but they weren't there. They didn't see the way it moved. They didn't feel its gaze. Sometimes, I wonder if it was a decoy at all. Or maybe we were the decoys, lured out onto that road for its amusement. I don't drive on empty roads at dusk anymore. I'm always looking to the side of the road, into the fields and ditches. Terrified, I'll see a familiar shape, a burlap sack figure, waiting patiently, waiting to wave back. Thanks for tuning in to another story. If these tailies from the shadows intrigue you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you won't miss what's coming next. Until then, stay safe and check the horizon. You never know what's waiting out there. The old-timers on Lake Superior always had their stories. Warnings passed down through generations like frosted heirlooms. They spoke of the deep, the unnatural cold, and the hunger that came with the winter wind. I was a city boy, though, and I just saw a frozen expanse of opportunity. Ice fishing, a chance to get away, to sit in the quiet and think. I rented a shanty for the week, number 14, a little wooden box perched precariously over what felt like the edge of the world. The first 2 days were blissfully uneventful, just the hiss of my little propane heater, the occasional tug on my line, and the endless, blinding white outside. It was on the third night that the silence broke. It started subtly, a faint scratching sound from beneath the ice. I chalked it up to the lake settling, the immense pressure of the freeze. But the sound grew more insistent, more rhythmic. It sounded less like shifting ice, and more like long, sharp fingernails dragging across the underside of a dinner plate. I tried to ignore it, turning up the radio. But the scratching persisted. A maddening, deliberate scrape. Scrape, scrape, right under my feet. My heart started to beat a little faster. This wasn't natural. The ice here was feet thick, a solid barrier between me and the frigid abyss. Nothing should be able to make that sound. Then came the voice. It wasn't a voice in the traditional sense, not something carried on the wind. It felt like it was whispered directly into my skull, a dry, rattling sound that was both a plea and a threat. So, hungry, it rasped, a long, drawn-out syllable that seemed to stretch into eternity. I froze, every muscle in my body locking up. I clicked off the heater, plunging the shanty into near-total darkness. Save for the faint glow of the moon on the snow outside, I peered down the fishing hole, my breath fogging in the sudden chill. The water was black, impenetrable. The scratching stopped. For a moment, there was only the sound of my own ragged breathing. "Let me in," the voice whispered again, closer this time, as if it was right at the edge of the hole. My blood ran cold. This was impossible. This had to be a hallucination. My mind playing tricks on me in the isolation. But the feeling of pure, primal dread was all too real. It was then that I remembered the old stories, the ones I'd dismissed as local folklore. Stories of the Wendigo, the spirit of insatiable hunger. A gaunt, skeletal creature born from desperation and the cannibalistic taboo. They said it could mimic human voices, luring you into its grasp. They said its presence was a blight, freezing the very air around it. Suddenly, a tapping started on the shanty door. A light, almost polite. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I hadn't heard any footsteps. No crunch of snow. It was as if something had just materialized outside. "Hello?" A man's voice called out, friendly and concerned. "Everything all right in there?" Saw your light go out. It sounded like a normal person, maybe another fisherman checking in. For a second, a wave of relief washed over me. Maybe I was just being paranoid. I crept to the door, my hand hesitating over the latch, but then I heard it. Faint, but unmistakable, underneath the man's friendly tone. "Dat Samadri," rattling whisper. "So hungry." I stumbled back from the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. It was a trick. The creature was outside, trying to coax me out into the open. The polite knocking became more forceful, the wood of the shanty groaning under the impacts. "Hey, open up. It's freezing out here. I need help." The voice pleaded, its tone growing more desperate, more restrained. But the friendly facade was cracking. The words started to slur, to stretch unnaturally. The voice becoming deeper, more guttural with each blow. The pounding on the door became a furious, animalistic assault, shaking the entire structure. I could hear wood splintering. It was trying to break in. Primera vez, scrambling over my gear, my eyes fixed on the door as it shuddered on its hinges. The voice outside was no longer human. It was a cacophony of snarls and shrieks, a terrifying sound that echoed the emptiness of the frozen wasteland. And then, from below, the scratching returned, louder and more frantic than ever. It was coming from everywhere at once, under the floor, against the walls. It was as if a whole nest of them had surrounded me. The ice beneath my feet began to crack, thin fissures spreading out from the fishing hole like a spiderweb. Through one of the new cracks, I saw something move, a pale, long-fingered hand, emaciated and gray, pressed up against the underside of the ice. Then, another hand appeared, and another. The screams started then, not from the creature, but from under the ice. It sounded like a dozen voices, trapped and terrified, their cries muffled by the water and ice, but filled with an agony that was unmistakable. They were the voices of its past victims, their tormented spirits trapped in this frozen hell. The shanty was starting to tilt, the ice giving way under the relentless assault from below. The creature outside let out a final, triumphant roar, and the door burst inward, splintering into 100 pieces. In the frame stood a silhouette that defied all logic. It was impossibly tall and thin, its limbs elongated like a stretched shadow, its head crowned with what looked like jagged antlers. Its eyes glowed with a faint, predatory light. Before I could take a step inside, the ice under me gave way completely. I plunged into the bone-chilling water, the shock of the cold stilling my breath. As I sank into the blackness, I saw the Wendigo, its gaunt face twisted in a rictus of eternal hunger. But it wasn't alone. The dark water was filled with them, pale, skeletal figures with glowing eyes and grasping claws. Their silent screams echoing in my mind. They were the source of the scratching, the voices, the terror. Shanty number 14 wasn't just a fishing spot. It was a feeding hole, and as the icy water filled my lungs and darkness consumed me, my last coherent thought was a single, terrifying word that I knew would soon join the chorus. Hungry. Thank you so much for listening to the end. I hope this story sent a chill down your spine. If you enjoyed this tale from the frozen depths, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel for more terrifying stories. Let me know in the comments what you thought, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Stay safe out there. The static hiss from a radio is often a comforting sound, a sign that someone is out there, listening. But what if the voice that answers isn't human? What if it's something ancient, something that mimics, something that hunts? Tonight's story is about a signal that should have never been answered. It was a cold, starless night near Shiprock, New Mexico. I was a young Navajo ranger, fresh on the job, assigned to the night watch. My patrol area was vast, a sprawling expanse of desert and mesas that looked like sleeping giants under the faint moonlight. My only companion was the crackle of the CB radio in my truck. My job was simple: patrol the perimeter of the reservation lands, check for trespassers, and report anything unusual. That night, unusual didn't even begin to cover it. The first few hours were dead quiet. Just the crunch of gravel under my tires and the occasional howl of a distant coyote. Around 2 a.m., I decided to do a routine radio check. It's a standard procedure, just to make sure you're still connected, still part of the living world out there in the immense darkness. I keyed the mic. Base, this is Ranger 1. Radio check. Over. Silence. I waited a few seconds, then tried again. Base, this is Ranger 1. Do you copy? Radio check. This time, a reply came back, but it wasn't the familiar, gruff voice of my supervisor, Frank. It was a strange, garbled sound, like someone was trying to talk backward. The static was thick, but I could make out syllables, twisted and reversed. A chill snaked up my spine. It was probably just interference, Primera told myself. A stray signal from a trucker or a weather anomaly. I tried one more time, speaking slowly and clearly. Base, this is Ranger 1. Having some radio trouble. Please respond if you can hear me. Over. The reply was instant, and this time, it was clear. Too clear. Here, you can if respond, please. Troubled radios, some having... It was my own voice, but each word was played in reverse order. It was my sentence, flipped on its head. My blood ran cold. This wasn't interference. This was mimicry. My hand trembled as I reached for the radio again, but I stopped myself. The old stories my grandfather told me flooded my mind. Stories of the Yi Naldushi. He said they could imitate any sound, any voice. They use it to lure you, to confuse you, to draw you out into the dark where they are strongest. He warned me never to answer a voice you don't know, especially at night. I clicked off the radio, plunging my truck into complete silence. My heart was a drum against my ribs. I scanned the darkness outside my windows, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The desert, which had felt peaceful moments before, now seemed menacing, alive with unseen things. Every shadow looked like a crouching figure. Every rustle of the wind sounded like footsteps. I had to keep moving, get back to the main station. I put the truck in drive and started heading back, faster than I should have. My eyes darted from the road to the mirrors, to the sprawling darkness on either side. About a mile down the road, I saw it. Standing on a low mesa, silhouetted against the slightly less black sky, was a figure. It was too tall to be a man, and its limbs were too long, bent at angles that weren't right. It was just standing there, watching me. I hit the gas. The truck roared, kicking up a plume of dust. I didn't dare look back in the mirror. I just drove, my eyes locked on the dirt road ahead. Then, my radio crackled to life on its own. I hadn't touched it. The same distorted, backward voice filled the cab, but this time it wasn't mimicking me. It was laughing, a horrible, guttural laugh that seemed to echo from the radio and from the desert outside at the same time. Suddenly, a heavy thud slammed against the roof of my truck, as if something massive had just landed on it. The whole truck bucked. I screamed, swerving wildly before regaining control. I could hear scraping noises above me, the sound of claws on metal, digging, trying to find a purchase. It was on my roof. Whatever was out there was on top of my truck. I didn't think. I just acted. I slammed on the brakes, then gunned the engine, fishtailing the truck violently from side to side. I was trying to shake it off. The scraping got louder, more frantic. Then, with a final, screeching scrape, I heard another thud as something heavy hit the ground behind me. I risked a glance in my rearview mirror, in the red glow of my taillights. I saw it scramble to its feet. For a split second, I saw a pair of glowing, yellow eyes and the glint of what looked like a coyote's pelt slung over a stooped, unnaturally thin frame. It wasn't a man. It wasn't an animal. It was something in between. It took a step towards my truck, its movements jerky and wrong. I didn't wait to see more. I pushed the accelerator to the floor, and it unslowed down until the lights of the ranger station were a comforting glow in the distance. I burst into the office, pale and shaking. Frank, my supervisor, took one look at me and knew something was terribly wrong. I told him everything, my voice cracking. I told him about the radio, the backward voice, the thing on the mesa, the creature on my truck. Frank, a man who had worked these lands his entire life, didn't laugh or call me crazy. He just nodded slowly, his face grim. He went outside with a flashlight. When he came back, he was carrying a large, twisted piece of metal. It was the truck's radio antenna. It had been bent into a perfect, unnatural spiral and was covered in deep, gouge-like scratches. At the base of the antenna, caught in the metal, was a tuft of coarse, gray and black fur. It wasn't from any animal I recognized. We never filed an official report on it. What would we say? Frank just marked it down as vandalism and damage from unidentified wildlife. He told me that some things in the desert are best left alone, and that some radio calls are not meant for us. He said I was lucky. The creature wasn't just trying to scare me, it was testing me, playing with me. Using my own voice against me was its way of showing me it knew who I was, and that it could get to me. I worked as a ranger for 5 more years after that night, but I never did another night watch alone near ship. I never used the radio unless I absolutely had to, and every time I did, a part of me dreaded the static, terrified of the voice that might answer back. Some nights, when the wind howls just right, I can almost hear it, a garbled, backward whisper on the edge of hearing. A reminder of the night my own voice was used to hunt me. So if you're ever out in the remote parts of the world, alone in the dark with just a Radio 4 company, be careful. Be very careful who you talk to, because you never know what might be listening and what might answer back. Thank you for joining me for this story. I hope it sends a chill down your spine. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more tailies from the shadows. Stay safe out there, and always check who's on the other end of the line. The forest holds secrets, ancient and dark. Most people visit Estes Park for the breathtaking views of the Rockies, to see the elk, to feel the crisp mountain air. But I came here looking for a different kind of wild. I came looking for a story, a legend whispered on the wind, a creature of insatiable hunger. I came looking for the Wendigo. My journey began with local folklore, hushed talis, told around campfires, about hikers who vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a single, strange track in the snow. They spoke of a chilling whistle that echoes through the pines on moonless nights, a sound that freezes the blood and promises a gruesome end. The old-timers in town would just shake their heads, their eyes holding a deep, unspoken fear. Some things are best left undisturbed. One of them warned me, his voice barely a whisper. But I was a fool. I thought it was just a story. I set up my base camp deep within the Roosevelt National Forest, just a few miles from the edge of Estes Park. The first few days were peaceful, almost deceivingly so. The beauty of the landscape was immense, with towering peaks scraping the sky and ancient trees standing like silent sentinels. I spent my days hiking, documenting, taking photos, feeling the profound solitude of the wilderness. But as the sun dipped below the horizon each evening, a different feeling would creep in, a sense of being watched. It started subtly, a twig snapping just beyond the glow of my campfire, a shadow flitting at the edge of my vision. I'd dismiss it as a deer or a coyote, my rational mind fighting against the primal fear that was slowly taking root. But then came the sounds. On the third night, I was woken by a high-pitched cry, almost like a woman's scream, but distorted, warped into something utterly inhuman. It was carried on the wind, and it seemed to come from everywhere at once. My heart hammered against my ribs, and I didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, I found it, a footprint, pressed deep into the soft earth near a stream. It was long, unnaturally so, with 3 sharp-looking toes. It was nothing like a bear or a mountain lion. It was exactly as the legends had described. A cold dread washed over me. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was real, and it was close. That's when I made my biggest mistake. Instead of packing up and running, I decided to follow the tracks, driven by a morbid curiosity I couldn't explain. I pushed deeper into the woods, leaving the marked trails far behind. The forest grew denser. The sunlight struggled to pierce the thick canopy, and an eerie silence descended, broken only by the crunch of my own boots. The tracks led me to a narrow ravine, a dark scar in the earth, and there I found its lair. Piles of bones, picked clean and scattered about. Most were animal deer, elk, even a bear. But then I saw it, a tattered hiking boot, still laced up, lying next to a splintered human femur. The air grew heavy, thick with the stench of decay and something else. Something wild and musky. Panic finally seized me. I turned to flee, but it was too late. A guttural growl echoed from the shadows of the ravine. I didn't see it at first, just a shape moving, a tall, skeletal figure unfolding itself from the darkness. It was impossibly thin, its skin stretched taut over protruding bones, the color of ash. Its limbs were long and spindly, ending in razor-sharp claws. But its head was the stuff of nightmares. A deer's skull, antlers cracked and broken, sat atop its narrow shoulders, and from the empty sockets of that skull, 2 points of malevolent, glowing light stared directly at me. It let out that same chilling whistle I'd heard before, a sound that resonated deep in my bones. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated hunger. Primera, traene. I've never run so fast in my life. I didn't look back. Branches whipped at my face. Roots tripped me, but I scrambled back up, fueled by sheer terror. I could hear it behind me, its long strides effortless, the snapping of twigs getting closer and closer. It wasn't just chasing me, it was toying with me, enjoying the hunt. The whistle echoed through the trees, a constant, terrifying reminder of the predator on my heels. I could hear its ragged breaths, a dry, rattling sound, like dead leaves skittering across pavement. I risked a glance over my shoulder and saw it closing the distance, its skeletal frame moving with a terrifying, unnatural graze. Its glowing eyes burned into me, promising a fate worse than death. I burst out of the tree line and stumbled onto a dirt road, my lungs on fire, my legs screaming. A pair of headlights cut through the twilight. A truck screeched to a halt just inches from me. The driver, an old hunter, saw the look on my face, saw the direction I'd come from, and he knew. "Get in," he screamed, his face pale. I threw myself into the passenger seat, and he slammed on the gas. As we sped away, I looked back at the tree line. For a split second, I saw it standing there, a tall, gaunt silhouette against the dying light, its deer skull head tilted as if in curiosity. Then it simply melted back into the shadows of the forest. I left Estes Park the next day. I didn't pack my camp. I left everything behind. I just drove and didn't stop until the mountains, or a faint line in my rearview mirror. Some nights, I still wake up in a cold sweat, the sound of that whistle echoing in my ears. I went to the Rockies looking for a legend, and I found it, but the truth is far more terrifying than any story. The Wendigo is real. It's out there in the deep, dark woods of Colorado, and it's always hungry. So if you ever find yourself hiking near Estes Park and you hear a strange whistle in the wind, don't be a fool like me. Just run. Thanks for watching. If you have your own terrifying encounters, share them in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories from the edge of the unknown. Stay safe out there. The steam rising from the hot spring was supposed to be relaxing, a gentle curtain separating me from the biting cold of the remote Utah wilderness. I had hiked for 2 days to reach this hidden gem, a place whispered about in online forums, promising solitude and a connection with nature. For the first hour, it was paradise. The mineral-rich water soothed my aching muscles, and the only sounds were the gentle bubbling of the spring and the sigh of the wind through the pines. But as dusk began to settle, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and orange, the steam began to behave strangely. It wasn't just rising anymore. It was coalescing, gathering in a thick, unnatural cloud just above the water's surface, about 20 feet away from me. I blinked, rubbing my eyes. Maybe the heat was getting to me. I took a deep breath of the sulfur-tinged air and tried to ignore it, but the cloud didn't dissipate. Instead, it swirled and thickened, pulling in more vapor until it formed a dense, opaque shape. My heart started to beat a little faster. This wasn't normal. The air grew still, the wind died down completely, and an unnerving silence fell over the clearing. Then, with a horrifying, deliberate slowness, the steam began to change. Tendrils stretched out from the main mass, thinning and elongating. I watched, frozen in the water, as one of those tendrils split at its end, forming what looked disturbingly like fingers. 5 of them. It was a perfect 5-fingered hand, crafted entirely from steam, hovering over the water. It was larger than any human hand, easily the size of a dinner plate, and it hung there, impossibly solid, impossibly real. My breath hitched in my throat. Every rational thought screamed that this was a trick of the light, a hallucination. But it wasn't flickering. It wasn't shifting. It was just steady. The steam hand clenched slowly, impossibly, into a fist, then unfurled again, palm up, as if an invitation. Or was it a beckoning? A cold dread, far colder than the surrounding air, seeped into my bones. This wasn't a natural phenomenon. This was something else. Something intelligent. I remembered the old Navajo ranger I'd met at the trailhead. He'd eyed my pack and my destination with a somber expression. "Some places out here," he'd said, his voice low. "They're older than the mountains. They have residents. Don't whistle after dark. And don't stay in one place for too long, especially near water. Some things are drawn to the warmth, to the life." At the time, I'd dismissed it as a local folklore, a charming bit of color from my trip. Now, his words echoed in my mind like a death knell. The hand of steam turned, its palm now facing me directly. The fingers twitched, a beckoning gesture that was both subtle and undeniably menacing. It wanted me to come closer. My body was screaming at me to get out, to run, but I was paralyzed by a morbid fascination and pure, unadulterated terror. The water around me suddenly felt like a trap, thick and heavy. That's when I heard the sound. It started as a low click, like 2 stones being tapped together, coming from the dense woods just beyond the spring. Click, click. It was rhythmic, and it was getting closer. My head snapped towards the tree line, my eyes straining to see into the deepening shadows. The clicking stopped, and for a moment, there was only the sound of my own frantic heartbeat. Then, a new sound began, a voice. But it wasn't human. It was a gurgling, wet mimicry of speech, like someone trying to talk with a mouthful of water and gravel. The words were disjointed, nonsensical, but in the middle of the garbled mess, I heard something clearly. My name. It whispered my name on the wind, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I looked back at the steam. The hand was gone. The thick cloud had vanished as if it had never been there. The steam now rising normally in gentle, harmless wisps. The sudden return to normalcy was almost more terrifying than the apparition itself. It felt like a game, a predator, toying with its prey. The clicking started again, much closer this time, just at the edge of the clearing. The gurgling voice whispered my name again, this time with a chilling, possessive tone. I knew then, with absolute certainty, that I was not alone, and that whatever was with me was not friendly. The ranger's warning about things being drawn to warmth, to life, it wasn't folklore. It was a survival guide I had foolishly ignored. Panic finally broke through my paralysis. I scrambled out of the hot spring, not caring about the thermal shock as the frigid air hit my wet skin. I didn't grab my towel, didn't bother with my clothes. I just snatched my boots, not even putting them on, in my backpack, and I ran. I ran blindly into the forest, away from the spring, away from that voice. Behind me, I heard a sound that will haunt my dreams for the rest of my life. It was a shriek of rage and frustration, a sound that was part animal, part human, and entirely monstrous. It was followed by the heavy, thudding sound of something large crashing through the underbrush, keeping pace with me. I didn't dare look back. I just ran, my bare feet screaming in agony on the sharp rocks and frozen ground. The clicking sound was right behind me, sometimes to my left, sometimes to my right. It was flanking me, hurting me. The gurgling whispers continued, weaving through the trees, telling me to stop, to wait, that the water was so warm. I don't know how long I ran. It felt like an eternity. By some miracle, I stumbled back onto the main trail. The sound of pursuit seemed to fall back slightly, as if it were hesitant to leave its territory. I didn't stop. I ran until the first light of dawn broke through the canopy, and I didn't stop until I saw the ranger station in the distance. I burst through the door, a raving, half-naked madman. The old Navajo ranger was there. He took one look at my wild eyes and my bleeding feet, and simply nodded, a deep sadness in his expression. He wrapped me in a thick wool blanket and sat me down by a crackling fire. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't have to. He just said, "You are lucky. The steam warned you." Sometimes, the land tries to protect those who listen. I learned that day that some stories aren't just stories, and some hot springs are best. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had a strange encounter in the wilderness, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you enjoy chillin' tales like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next one. Stay safe out there.